Getting 40% of a game cut on the last day of development, contract deal madness, and burning down servers on Christmas Day, these are spooky game development stories. The year is 2007, and I have my first job in the games industry, working as a junior designer on my first ever project. It's a game for the Nintendo Game Boy Advance, and we're tasked with making a 10-hour-long game on a 4 megabyte cartridge. 4 megs is maybe like 4 seconds worth of HD video data. Now, this isn't just a game we're making for ourselves. Back in 2007, a big chunk of the Australian games industry was work for hire. We were building a game for THQ, the publisher, who in turn had licensed the Avatar: The Last Airbender IP from Nickelodeon. We, the game developers, are at the bottom of the food chain in this situation. The 10 hours is meant to cover the entire story of Season 2 of The Last Airbender. So how do you fit 10 hours into 4 megs? Well, you do lots and lots of work to squeeze every single bite you can out of what you have. You palette swap assets, you remix assets so it feels like a new area when really it's just exactly the same stuff. You write music using an instrument system, basically like MIDI, instead of saving the waveforms. And, well, you repeat stuff. A lot of stuff. And street brawler games are pretty good for this. So while we are struggling away trying to make this game, at the same time, THQ is also building a Wii version of the game. Now, it's a completely different game, of course. The Wii and the GBA are very different consoles, but the idea is still the same. So near the end of the project, we're all pulling some crazy overtime to get it done. We only had a couple of dev kits as well, so mostly we all used the old piracy cards you could get for GBA, and we would use that on our own personal GBAs and just sit around and test the game as much as we could late into the night. Finally, the big day came, the day that we submit the game. The submission package was complete, we'd finally hit everything perfectly on time. But then, we got a very unexpected call from the publisher. It turns out, the team making the Wii version of the game had been running low on time and made a decision. Instead of the game covering the entire of Season 2, their game actually ends at the Drill Machine, which is a big, huge climactic battle in episode 13 out of 20. Now, our game covered the entirety of Season 2 and ended on episode 20, which is, what we'd been asked to do. However, the publisher felt that even though these were very different games, it wasn't really a good look for them to end in different places. So on the final day of development, after months of making compromises to fit the whole game into 4 tiny megabytes, we had to cut out roughly 35% of the game. The rest of the game is actually in there. We didn't even really have time to delete it because it was such a last-minute decision, but the credits roll at the end of the Drill Machine fight. There's actually a password somewhere in there that gets you into the second half of the game. But the fact remains, we made so many compromises for almost half of a game that no one will ever see. Two years later, I was making a game for THQ again. This time, however, it was a game for the Nintendo DS, and the license was Marvel's Superhero Squad. This was 2009, just a year after the first Iron Man movie, before Marvel was like the globally dominant force it is today. The goal was to make another street brawler style game, using a whole heap of the awesome Marvel cast. We started designing all kinds of crazy co-op super moves that our hero might be able to do, and in general just started building the game. Early on, however, we got asked by the publishers to pivot. Instead of doing a standard street brawler, they wanted us to make it more like Smash Brothers. I, for one, was stoked. I love Smash Brothers, and many people on the team really loved it too. A Marvel Universe game with Smash Brothers gameplay, it just makes so much sense. So we threw away a bunch of work and started again. When you're building on really tight timelines for physical media, you have to make a lot of decisions early on. One of them was how big are the levels and how many characters are on the screen. This was so we could budget the ROM size, how many polygons the characters would be, and generally how the entire game would be architected. And it's important because if you go over those physical limits, the game just doesn't work. There's nothing you can do about it. So we changed the architecture of heaps of the game to make it focus on tiny arenas and just very few characters on screen. I still have footage here of the very first playable version recorded on a Nintendo DS dev kit, and we were playing 4-player and starting to get our combat working. You can see it's basically Final Destination. We have blocking, rolling, dodging, it's all the same as in Smash. On licensed games, you really didn't have the time or budget to innovate a lot. You would copy something you would think would work and try and do a few little new things and just hope for the best. We played the game together as a team every single morning and would make small tweaks, hoping to slowly hone in on a balanced and compelling multiplayer game. So things were going okay. We were about halfway through the project at this point. But then someone at THQ noticed a huge, mega terrifying mistake. The contract that had been signed with Marvel required that the game genre be a street brawler. A straight-up Smash-style fighting game was not it. It needed to have levels, many versus one combat, and story beats. Our whole plan had been turned completely on its head. Again. The genre of the game had changed, and it was too late to change very much. So we just did what we could. We had a level editor that really could only make very basic arenas and just hacked together what we could. We created enemies and tried to plug them into the existing combat engine, and we got it done in the end, but the game was a complete hot mess. The reviews, of course, were terrible. I mean, we kind of made a pretty bad game. But at this stage, the studio was fighting for survival. We just did our best and moved on. It's not like everything just happened to us. We may have created a few fires of our own. Flash forward to 2010. We've released Fruit Ninja and it's a mega hit. The game is $1 on the App Store. You know, back when mobile games cost money. And back then, the App Store worked very differently. One of the interesting quirks was that the whole App Store would essentially freeze for a week or so over Christmas. You couldn't submit games or updates, and in fact the entire top charts froze positions as well. And this was extra crazy because at Christmas you could often see sales double or even triple. So if you were at the top of the charts at the lockdown, you were going to have a very good Christmas indeed. So we hatched a plan. Fruit Ninja was already out, but what we hadn't done, which was pretty standard at the time, was make a light version of the game. So this would be a free copy that would upsell to the paid version. Our plan was, release the free version right before the lockdown, try and ride the hype, land in #1 and stay there all over Christmas, getting millions of downloads and upselling to the paid version of the game. The tricky part was how to present the upsell. We didn't really know how often to show it and what would be the best setup. And this was before A/B testing and analytics packages was super commonplace. But then we had an idea. We were already using a leaderboard system called OpenFaint. So we figured, what if the game had dozens of invisible leaderboards? Normally a leaderboard just holds scores, but with a few hacks, we could make it save data about whether our upsells were working or not. And then we could have more invisible leaderboards that the game could download. And we could manipulate that to change the upsell frequency. So we launched Fruit Ninja Lite, and it worked exactly as we had planned. It popped way up the charts and then froze there as the App Store lockdown happened. It was a huge success. The only problem is, we didn't tell OpenFaint what our plan was. And having a free app absolutely hammering dozens of invisible leaderboards was not exactly what the product was designed to do. But by the time we realized all the traffic we were sending their way, it was too late. Everything was already locked down. So some poor engineer at OpenFaint had some very stressful days right at Christmas time, dealing with millions of players slamming their servers as our dodgy, terrible A/B system just ran over the entire Christmas period. Sorry, OpenFaint. That was our bad. Okay, I need to get out of this now. Ugh. Whew.